right, I'll jump in. I'm Kimberly Wilson, and I'm brand new to Howell High School, and I'm also brand new to being an Interact advisor. So I'm super excited to get it up and going again at the high school. It's been a couple of years, and so excited to get it running again.
Great, glad to have you here, Kimberly.
Thank you.
I guess I'll jump in, and I apologize for joining late. I'm Stephanie Talley with the McKinney Rotary Club, or we like to say the Rotary Club of McKinney. Anyway, I've been the youth services chair for a few years now, but like a lot of you guys, our Interact Club kind of disappeared during COVID. And we weren't really able to get it back up last year due to restrictions in the schools. So we've just gotten started. I've got a new faculty advisor that we're really excited to have. And we've started having biweekly meetings. We've had a few. We just elected officers today. So we're excited to kind of get back up and rolling. And I'm excited for all the district resources and everything else. So that is us.
Stephanie, it's great to have you here today. And I just want to say what I heard from the survey, and actually from a lot of people that I'm talking to, there's a lot of clubs that are restarting. So I think everyone can feel kind of comfortable, like that's happening everywhere with COVID. And actually that's kind of how this training came about. Was I was talking to Steve and he was telling me some of the stuff that they're doing at Waxahachie Global. And I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if the clubs that I'm talking to about who are new or restarting could hear what they're doing, you know? And I know there's other folks joining us today who are also have great ideas. So that's really how I see this training, is really more like us talking together as peers. Because I found personally that's how it works the best. You know, you hear somebody talk about what they're doing and you're like, oh yeah, okay, we could do that, you know, or there's a way to partner together as clubs. So again, I think a lot of clubs are in the restarting or new process. And so I think Steve's got some really great stuff to share today. But so I'll stop talking. We'll keep going on introductions.
Okay, I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Sasha Merrier, and I'm here at Newman Smith High School. I've actually been a counselor for the last year, and then I've been in the district for quite some time now. So I am stepping in to replace the infamous Mrs. Holdage, which is tough because she's amazing, as you guys know. So I am here as the new Interact sponsor, so I'm excited. And honestly, it sounds, based off of what I've observed, the kids are phenomenal and they seem to just run it. And so I'm just sort of stepping in and helping with facilitating, and that's about it.
Fantastic. We jump on it. I know there's a few more that haven't introduced yet.
All right, I'll go next. My name is Edgar Salas. I am a CTE business teacher at Woodrow Wilson High School, and I am my school's Rotary sponsor, along with Mr. Charles Dowden there.
Glad to have you here, Edgar. And thank you for being your Woodrow Wilson sponsor. I know there's some folks working out here. We'd love to hear from you still. I don't know, Amber, are you available? Or Mr. Hazelwood?
I'm sorry, did you call me?
When I said you wanted to say hi and introduce yourself. I'm just trying to get to everybody, but I know it's a little funny on Zoom. Awesome. Mr. Vans introducing himself in the chat. Great to have you. I know sometimes folks are on, but they're not in a position where they can actually introduce. So If this used to, feel free to chime in later, but I think we'll go and go ahead with Steve Martell from Montreal Global has a presentation. Steve, I think it's your chance to take it away.
Okay, thank you. First question I have is, can you see my screen, full screen? Just want to make sure I'm set up okay. Can I get a thumbs up if y'all can see? Are you seeing the Interactive Advisor Workshop? Okay, good. All right. I had my co-sponsor also was going to be here with me. Unfortunately, he had a conflict that came up suddenly today. So that's Bob Lester. He and I both have been Interact sponsors here at Global for the last 5 years each. So that's where the 10 years comes in. I do want to say right here at the get-go, I do not claim to be an expert in regards to being an Interact sponsor, but kind of like Shirley was saying, there is wisdom in just observing what other people do, and then you can get ideas and stuff like that from other people. And in the 5 years that I've been here, one of the things that seems to be common is that there's not a whole lot of stuff that's out there that tells you how to be an advisor, what you need to do. And so in an effort to that, one of the things that I'm doing, and when Charlie and I were talking the other day, is she told me, she goes, I like it when people share right up front what their resources are as opposed to wait till the very end. So in deference to Shirley, you will see right here on the screen a QR code or a URL that if you want to take that down, I've got a Google Drive folder that I've shared with you that has a lot of the things that I'm going to be covering today, a lot of the physical items that we use for running our meetings and such, so that if you wanted to look that up and go along with me, you can, or I'm also going to share the same URL at the end of today's PowerPoint. And by the way, yes, the PowerPoint I've also put in there so that if you want a copy of it for whatever reason, make fun of me afterwards, you know, whatever, you can do that. Over my shoulder, as I said earlier, is Diane Johnson. She is our sponsor, Rotary sponsor that works with our club. And how long have you been part?
A lot longer than you have.
A lot longer than us, that's right. But even Diane and I, we were talking about this, and there were some similarities in that it seems like if you get somebody that volunteers, you just kind of get thrown into it, and then you're expected to figure it all out on your own.
Exactly.
And it sounds like some of you may have the same types of situations. So before we get started, I would like to share a quote, because I am a teacher and we start off with inspiration. And this quote I came across is, there is no greater calling than to serve your fellow men. There is no greater contribution than to help the weak. And there is no greater satisfaction than to have done it well. And I think that's one of the reasons why we as advisors are a part of Interact, because we want to make a difference and we want to help students learn how to be good leaders. And my personal philosophy is they don't know that right off the bat. You have to show them, you have to give them examples. And so when I was thinking about how to lay this out, the thing that came to my mind was actually just showing you a typical timeline of what we do here at Global. And so I'm going to talk about each one of these areas in a typical year. And our year actually starts with the end of the previous year. And not everybody does this, I know, but for us, we start with the previous end of the year with new officers, and then we move forward. So I'm going to talk about all of that today and go one by one. So let's talk about officer elections. Like I said, that starts in early April. We advertised to our club that we're going to be doing our officers elections for the next year. And we'll have candidates submit applications to us. We provide them an application packet, and that packet includes the officer descriptions and the responsibilities of each officer position. And then we give them some blank sheets that they write out an essay about why they want to be an officer. And they also write out their speech on what they will present to our club, stating to the membership why they want to be an officer and why they should be elected. And then they also give us their current grade transcript, so we see what they're doing grade-wise. Once we get that, each candidate then meets with us as sponsors individually. We do a little bit of a interview with them, kind of vet them a little bit, asking why they want to be a part of Interact if they haven't been already, and if they have been, what qualifications do they feel like that they have for that particular position. And we'll make sure that there's no red flags particularly. And then in late April, the second meeting in April, they actually come in and deliver their speeches in front of the clubs, and then we do an actual vote. And our votes, we do it by way of a Google form. And as soon as the voting is over with, we don't close it immediately. It's within a day. But then we don't announce the winner right there, because one of the things we also want to make sure is that everybody who is voting is an active member of Interact. And so essentially on the back end, after the voting, I go back through and look at all of those, make sure that nobody's voted more than once, just kind of validate the process. And then the following week, we announce who our new officers for the next year will be. And then the last meeting of our year in May, we actually let the new officers run that final meeting, sort of tag team passing of the guard, so to speak, in regards to that. Then one of the reasons that we do this way is then during the summer, we hold a leadership training, and this is an all-day leadership training. Usually is somewhere in late July, first part of August, depending on when we start school. And we spend that specific time so that we can go over our officers. Now that they're have been inducted, we want them to know exactly what they've gotten themselves into and what our expectations as advisors will be. So the schedule typically for that leadership training, for the first half of the day, we obviously start off with food, because you can't do anything without food, right? We do an icebreaker, and then once again, we'll go back over reviewing the officer descriptions and responsibilities, what's required of them, their expectations, find out if they have any questions. And then in the past, we've also spent some time on parliamentary procedure. Now, this is one of those interesting things that comes up sometimes. I was telling Shirley the other day, I had a very good experience in college with parliamentary procedure and what that looks like, and how you can successfully run a meeting using that. Most students don't quite catch that right off the bat. And so you have to kind of explain some of that to them. Not so that you have to be so rigid in your format, but that you can make sure that everybody's voice is heard and everybody gets to vote on whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then we'll spend time and go over the different elements and the parts of what a meeting looks like, talking about agendas, minutes, what kind of reports should be presented each week, not each week, each meeting. Talk about old business, new business, any announcements, what our actual program looks like, and then we end typically with the four-way test in regards to that. And then we'll
Hey,
spend a little bit
Steve.
of time. Yeah,
We have a quick question here.
yes, go
I
ahead.
think it's back on the officers and it's from Stephanie Talley, and she said, do you have a minimum GPA standard for prospective officers?
Great
is-
question.
She said, or is submitting their transcript just to help the sponsors be aware of their academic standing?
It's made there is no minimum standard that we have per se, but if their GPA was probably low, we might ask them a question in regards to that. We used to also require them to get personal references from a teacher that knows them well, but our school is so small. We have about 400 students that we pretty much know most of our students anyway, so we don't even do that anymore. But the GPA is basically just to kind of give us a heads up if there's a potential problem area. Any other
Hey,
questions?
I got a question for you, Steve.
Yeah,
One thing I've thought about, when you're trying to build, and I've wondered if anybody else may have tried this, is elect officers, and when you're in a rebuild, you're gonna have to do two sets of officers. But I was thinking electing officers in like September. You have your existing officers, then you have your new officers, what you would call a president-elect. It's sort of like what we do in Rotary. You have
right.
a president-elect, a vice president, treasurer, and they shadow and help the existing president, vice president during the course of the year. So at the end of the year, they've had on-the-job training. They've got to see how somebody else does it, interact with them, and then because it's something I'm thinking about is while we're trying to rebuild at Woodrow, is maybe try that out. But it's going to be a challenge because I've got two students, so it's going to be a challenge because we're working on a recruiting project Ed and I are doing November 30th. So trying to come up, I'm a banker, so my marketing approach to things is a lot different than trying to market to high school students. So it's going to be a challenge to kind of come with what's the bait there that would entice them to consider doing this. So, but I'm going to try to go at it from a service standpoint.
I think it's a great idea. I would say for us in actual practice, sometimes we're hard pressed to fill the 5 officer positions we already have, let alone having somebody in waiting in regards to that. And I think it was you that alluded earlier to the problem with, most of your leadership tends to be seniors, and then they graduate, you have no leadership again. And that's one of the constant things that we also deal with is how do you groom, underclassmen for the positions. This year, we're in a pretty good situation. Last year, we had a lot of seniors and we only had one officer who wasn't. She's our current president. This year, we have 3 of our officers who are seniors and we have 2 sophomores. So we're somewhat positioned this year for some continuity in that regards. And typically what has happened for us is those people who have had officer positions in the past will usually seek either the same position or, in their eyes, whatever the greater position is, whether or not they're, suited for it or not, that's debatable. But that continuity is the problem because, essentially you're turning over your club completely every 4 years, assuming they want to be involved all 4 years, and most of the time they don't. At least that's been our experience. The other thing I was going to mention in our schedule that we do is we also talk about service above self, and what does that mean to have a member in good standing. If you actually look at the Constitution, it talks about making sure that your member is in good standing, but it doesn't define that. And so we've had to kind of try to develop that a little bit over the years and what our expectations are, you know, on how many service hours they need to commit, how many programs or meetings they have to come to, whether they pay dues or not, those kinds of things. And I think that's some area that's a little bit left up to the individual clubs to kind of define. The second half of the leadership training is we talk about membership, how to go about recruiting, retaining, and developing our membership. We have an event called Quest Fest, and I'll get to that in just a minute on the next slide, but that's a new student orientation event at our school. And we talk about how we're going to be involved with that. And then the bulk of the afternoon is spent in brainstorming sessions, talking about what service projects we want to be involved in over the next year, what types of programs, you know, do we want to have, who do we want to invite, etc., and what types of fundraising that we want to do. We tend to, even though we give the students the ability to come up with literally a brand new slate, they tend to repeat a lot of the same things. Some of the stuff is really popular with them and they like those. And so we tend to do some of the other stuff. And I'm going to talk about specifically some of those projects in just a few minutes. And then we do some calendar planning, and then we talk about the vital importance of communication. My particular role here at Global, I am a adjunct for Navarro College and also a CTE teacher specifically in communication. And so one of the things that's hard, I think, for students to understand is how important it is to not only promote your meetings and your events, but continually to do that. And what I tell them is, you know, by the time you're sick and tired of hearing something, the general member is finally starting to get it, you know. And just yesterday we had a board meeting, and the president was saying that, you know, some of the things were not being received as well. Well, it's because they haven't done a whole lot of promoting. We're in the middle of a food drive right now and a pillow drive, and we've gotten some responses, but not as much as we'd like to. And it's because there's, other than the morning announcements, they're not doing a whole lot to promote that. We'll talk about some more about that. And then the last part of our leadership training, we talk about just really miscellaneous items like how to do elections if we want to change any of that. We spend time on standing committees, which is really interesting. Last year's president had a tendency, she liked to do everything herself, and she burned herself out. And every year I talk to them about, you need to develop leadership amongst your peers, and that's why we do the standing committees. And I'll talk about which ones we have here in just a few minutes as well. And then service hours and interact chords. All of our seniors will receive a number of different chords when they graduate. And as the Interact Club, one of the things that we do is we provide that chord for them free of charge, as long as they meet the minimum qualifications. And again, I'll talk about that in just a second. Quest Fest, like I said, is a new student orientation event that we have it here for all new students every year. It's hosted by our student council. And basically it's the time for new students to come on campus, get their new schedule. If they haven't toured the school by now, they'll do that. And then all of the clubs will represent themselves. In our leadership rally, one of the things that we do is we'll divide up the list of all of our incoming students, and our officers will handwrite an invitation to every new student and inviting them to Quest Fest. And the bulk of those obviously are freshmen, although we do have some upperclassmen in regards to that. And at the tables, our officers man the tables and basically discuss it with new freshmen or other new students, what Interact's all about, how they can become involved, when our first meeting is, and basically sign them up if they're interested. I think this is one of the key things that helps us have a number of people in our club, because every year we typically will start our club with somewhere around 75 to 100 people. Now, when you're a school of only 400, that's a fourth of your school in the club. So that's pretty good. Right now, Shirley was asking me before we came on, how are we doing? This year, we have 64 paid dues members, which is pretty good for us. Although one of the things that our president said yesterday was, she said our attendance is kind of waning a little bit. So we talked about that in our board meeting yesterday as to why do we think that is and what can we do about it. Talk about those, which transitions me into actual meetings. Obviously, again, with the Constitution, requires us to have 2 board meetings and 2 general meetings a month. For us, the board meetings are on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of the month. We hold it during our advisory period. Bob and I had talked about for next year, we may decide to try to move that to after school, because some of the problems is we don't have a whole lot of time in advisory, and we start getting deep into something and we run out of time and they have to move on to another class. So typically the agenda looks like this. We talk about an old and new business, what program is coming up, what community service project is next, what are we working on, and any miscellaneous notes. One of the hardest things from my perspective is getting them to see beyond the very next meeting. They don't plan. They wait, just like everything, they procrastinate. And even though we talk about it in our leadership training, even though we talk about it pretty much in every board meeting, you know, it ends up being like, okay, what are we doing next meeting? And they haven't thought about it. And what I try to impress upon them is, you know, if you're trying to bring somebody in, you have to be respectful of their time. You can't just say, oh, by the way, we have a meeting next week, can you make it? You know, professional people from outside coming into our meetings, you know, they're busy and they can't always, you know, make it at the last minute and stuff. So that's a struggle that we often have too, talking about that. This is also where I try to develop the standing committee so that the officers don't feel like everything weighs on their shoulders, but they can kind of divide that up. To be honest, we haven't been as successful as I would like for us to be in planning that out. Ideally, we should be working 2 or 3 months ahead, you know, figuring out what we're doing and where our members can be involved. And in my opinion, one of the reasons why we're kind of waning a little bit is because our membership doesn't have anything directly to do. And some of that is due to the pandemic, which has obviously, as you guys know, been a challenge the last couple of years. But we've consistently been able to have meetings throughout the pandemic, and you know, we're still trying to hang on to do that. Then obviously we also have 2 general meetings a month. For us, that's the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. And the reason it's a Tuesday is because that was an edict by our principal. So we had to move that to Tuesdays, also during advisory. So we try to get that scheduled down pretty quick so that we can fit a lot in during that time. But this is typically what we do in a general meeting. We'll have an agenda, start with our old business, talk about the minutes from the last meeting, do a treasurer's report, any new business that comes up. And then if we have a program, a special speaker, we'll have that presented. After they present, we'll go into any reminders or announcements, and then end always with the full weight test. Any questions up to this point? Okay, then let me move into service projects. So we have a number of service projects, some that we tend to repeat year after year. Our most popular one, without a doubt, is what's called Hidden Miracles. And this is in partnership with a local church. This is a respite night that's held once a month for parents of special needs children. And they drop off their children at the church, and they have the night off, and then our students come in and basically help with those individuals for the night. It is extremely popular. Our students love it. Unfortunately, with the pandemic for the last 2 years, it hasn't been able to be held. This year, we were hoping it would get started early again, but right now we're on hold until probably February to see if, because of obviously everybody's health concerns, we want to make sure that that's conducive to them being able to do so in a safe manner. So one of the things we do at the school is a positive affirmation. Basically, our students go down and take chalk on the sidewalk, and they'll draw images or positive messages right in front of the front entrance of our school, just as an affirmation to our student bodies and to our staff members, what kind of a good job they're doing. This year, we also did the first responder goodie bags. In the past, we've offered those to police and fire departments. This year, we actually delivered them to a couple of nursing facilities. I just got a note back from one of those today thanking us, and there's a handwritten note that our students do when we put together just little things that all of the students donate, and then we spend a meeting, put them all that together, and then we go deliver it. Salvation Army, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the red bags. We've done that in the past. Last year, again, because of COVID, that wasn't offered, but we're able to do some of the actual gift sorting. Their facility in Dallas has a big industrial warehouse, if you are not familiar with this. And all the donations that they get to give away to the Angel Tree recipients has to be unboxed and sorted and put on these big industrial shelves. And that was a lot of fun last year. This year, we haven't been able to work out the schedule in order for us to do that. So we're working on some of those things. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Trick or Treat So Kids Can Eat, where instead of collecting candy, our kids dress up and go collect canned goods, canned food. We do this along with the Rotary Club here in Waxahachie. They provide drivers if we need it. They also have a party at the local Boy Scout cabin where we meet afterwards, before and afterwards, and check in. And one of the things that we also do in that, in connection with World Polio Day, is we hand out, and I forgot to put this in the packet, but if y'all want it, I can. We hand out flyers to the neighborhoods ahead of time, letting them know that we're collecting the canned goods and that we're going to be back through that area on Halloween night to pick up the food. And during COVID, we were still able to do this because you said if they didn't want it contact, just put the flyer back on the porch with the food and we'll know it's ours and we'll take it. But on the back side of that, we also put information about World Polio Day and the eradication of polio and where it stands right now. And I got some of these statistics off of that site. So this is one way that we're also helping to educate our own community about World Polio and how to end it and what the Rotary clubs are doing in regards to that. Then Interact Week. Interact Week for me, I think is really interesting on how to acknowledge it. It's November, October, and the 1st of November gets really busy for our clubs. There are a lot of things happening, boom, boom, boom. And unfortunately, I mean, you can't change your birthday, but you know, it is what it is. And so one of the things we did a couple of years ago for our Rotary Club is we had a big sheet cake and it had the Interact Club logo on it. And we took it over there for them for their dessert for that month. This year, they kind of did a twist on that. They did a cake, but then they served it as part of our program for the actual club, for our club this year, just in helping to remember and celebrate that. I'm not sure what else you can do about that in regards to that. Be interesting to see. Like I mentioned earlier, we're currently doing a food drive in addition to what we already did for Trick or Treat so kids can eat. That's really going and collecting food from our community. Our food drive is really giving an opportunity for our students and our members to actually bring in food. Typically, we will here try to connect with our teachers and see if they'll offer some kind of incentive. Typically, that's, you know, some points added to a test or a grade, whatever the teacher's comfortable with in exchange for the food. And that ends tomorrow so that we can get that over to Waxahachie Cares, our local food pantry that delivers that stuff. And so we try to help support them any way we can in regards to that. And then some of you may be familiar with the program called Texas Country Reporter. Actually, this year they celebrate their 50th. I happen to be a big fan of that TV show. Last year, and that's held, the festival for that is held right here in Waxahachie. And so last year, the Rotary Club decided to sell water and beverages. And we provided some support from our Interact Club members to go over there and try to help with that. This year, they didn't repeat that, but we have done that in the past, just as another service opportunity. Deer Day is another popular one for our students, and this is not just for Interact members, although that's the bulk of who goes and participates. That's where we take a class period and go from here over to one of our local elementary schools and read to the elementary schools, both in English and in Spanish, and that's really popular. Usually the kids over at their schools will then, you know, give little cards or something like that, or definitely hugs and stuff. So our kids really like that opportunity. Kids Against Hunger is another one we haven't done in a while because of the pandemic, but is another great opportunity. This is where we actually go and package food for shipping to international locations. And the last one, I believe, went to Haiti. If I can remember, it's probably been about 2 or 3 years. They haven't contacted us recently, again, because of the pandemic. I'm guessing that's been on hold in that regards. Usually for Earth Day every year, we'll end our school year doing something related to that. Part of the funds that we were able to raise a few years ago, we actually purchased 3 trees to put in front of our own school. We've gone over to one of the local parks and helped the Rotary Club plant trees there. We've done some just different things. Last year, we did a project. We have some old picnic tables on our cafeteria that were kind of dilapidated when we moved in. And so we did a painting project to kind of revitalize that. Not sure that exactly fits with Earth Day, but that's kind of where we used it for. And then we have two main high schools here in Waxahachie. The other one is the bigger school that has about 2,000 students. And during trick or treat, so kids can eat, I was talking with the Diane's counterpart over there and telling him, talking about the potential of doing a joint club activity where we're working with them and do something maybe for like Habitat for Humanity or something like that, where our kids can actually go and work a day and do painting or, building something or, whatever. And so we're kind of looking into that. That's not been solidified yet. And then we usually try to end our year by giving back in some form or fashion. And if we have monies left over, like I said, we try to benefit somebody. This last year we had some funds, so we were able to provide some curtain drop that we didn't have for our school here. We used that. Again, just kind of giving some people some idea that it's not just all about us, but the community service aspect. Any questions about service projects before I move on to fundraisers? Okay, y'all not giving me a break, so can't even get my water.
Hang on. I'll let you give you a minute. Steve,
Give me my water. Thank you.
I mean, for me, it's a lot to take in, you know what I'm saying? And so one of the reasons I wanted to start this group is that we could have some conversations and at least get to know each other a little bit better. Some of you all may know each other. I know you've been around for a while as advisors or with Rotary clubs. But I also know there's a lot of new people. And so part of this is just to create a forum. And so I'll, check back later, see people if we want to exchange contact information or if there's a way. I've set up Slack so that we can communicate. But again, I just wanted to kind of get the ball rolling so we could have just other people to talk to. But Steve, I think we can see how many, good ideas there are. And just for some of these new advisors to know, there's people out there like you that they could, give a call or email to that they don't have to reinvent the wheel or create everything from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to let you keep going.
Okay, I just have a few more slides in case you were wondering if this is going to go forever. And talk about fundraising. We have in the past done things like sell school spirit t-shirts, hats, etc. To be honest, those haven't been overly successful. One of the things that we've done for the longest time, we have 2 dances, and one in the winter and one around Valentine's Day. And so we've sold flowers. It's popular with the students, but again, doesn't make us a whole lot of money. And it's a lot of work. I mean, we have to get the flowers. We usually spend a day, getting them prepped and ready to go. We like to put notes with them. So it's not just flowers, but you can write a note to individuals. So it's keeping track of all of that. And then we go to deliver it the 3rd day. And then you typically have problems with, well, they're not here today. What do you do with that? Well, you got fresh flowers and they're sitting in water in the school over the weekend. They don't last, so on and so forth. So this year I tried something new and different, and we sold fresh fruit. I'm a native Floridian, and this company, it actually came through my email. So I thought, hey, that piques my curiosity. And so I got in touch with them, and the beauty of this particular one, and y'all may have seen some programs like this that are more driven by social media. And it's essentially where you get people, your club members, to sign up with about 10 to 20 emails or phone numbers to text, and then it's actually pushed out to them that we're having a fundraiser, fruit sales, and it goes straight from the groves right to the recipients. We don't touch anything. And quite honestly, this was probably the easiest one from a labor standpoint that we've had, and also one of the most profitable ones that we've had. So we'll probably do it again, at least annually. I don't know that we do it more than once. But that was a good thing. And then membership dues. Again, forever and ever, our dues have been $10. And that's, you know, we look at that and we're like, oh, that's not much. But to some students, that is a lot of money. And we talk to them about that all the time. If it's the financial hardship, come talk to us privately. You know, we'll cover it. We'll make sure that that's not a problem for you to be a member. But basically, because we give them a t-shirt, that $10 pretty much just covers the cost of the t-shirt in that respect. And we also set a thing where we will collect dues from the start of school until the end of October. It's $10. And then come November 1st, we raise that amount to $15 up through the time we leave for spring or for Christmas. And if they haven't paid their dues by the time we leave for Christmas, then we basically cut it off, because essentially they've been in the club for half a year, and if they haven't paid dues, they basically are telling us they're really not that committed. Another interesting thing, a twist that we did this year, the officers decided to do this, was we do keep track of community service hours. And they decided this year that before we start keeping track of the community service hours, they need to have paid their dues. Which is like, okay. Trying to motivate them, in addition to saving money, you know, you can do it for $10 and get your t-shirt. And if you'll do that sometime quickly, then, you know, we've got it. And if not, you know, we basically have a cutoff point. And this is stems out of some experience we had probably about 4 years ago. We had a senior come to us, wanted to pay their $10 right at the end of the year so they could get their Interact service cord. Yeah, I see the hand.
Yeah, does your school have mandatory service hours requirement from students?
We have, that's a great question. Our students serve in clubs with community service. That's us, that's National Honor Society does it. And then we also have part of their graduation requirement is to serve community service. And there's a particular time set aside for that. Now, one of the things that we also came back was you can't double dip. You can't go do something for NHS, let's say, and get 3 hours of service and then come back and tell us, oh, I did this for 3 hours. It has to be either 3 hours for them or 3 hours for us. And so, like earlier when I was talking to you about the hidden miracles, we actually had to come up with a sign-in sheet, and then they declare right then, I'm doing this today because of NHS, or I'm doing it for Interact. And they sign off on that so that we can tabulate that accordingly. Because otherwise, then they don't do as much community service, and they're double dipping in a lot of different organizations. Is that right?
Because Woodrow doesn't. Yeah, Woodrow, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, Woodrow does not have a requirement for community service hours for graduation. Some schools, a lot of schools, as part of graduation, you have to have so many hours of community service. And Woodrow doesn't. And it's always great when they do. We love schools that do, because it kind of helps motivate students to go look for that organization to get involved in. So, yeah, okay.
Well, one of the other classes that I teach here, it's called a capstone class and it is specifically with seniors. And that's one of the things that I stress to them is that not only is it about giving back, but when you're applying for these colleges and these scholarships,
Yes.
in addition to, what is your GPA, they want to know, what are you doing? And if you're telling them, I didn't do anything, I wasn't involved in anything other than school, I basically tell them, you're telling them you don't care about anybody else but yourself. And that could potentially hurt you in either getting into that school or getting those scholarships that you want. It's all, and I haven't seen too many people not get that, that they understand that they need to. Now, how they do it, that's another interesting part of that.
Hey, y'all, I just want to acknowledge it is almost 5 o'clock. I understand some people may need to drop off. I'd love to have another 10 minutes just so that, Steve, you can finish your presentation, and then there are, a few last minute questions. We can answer those, but certainly thank you everyone for coming. And if you do need to go, please feel free to do that. But we'll keep going a few more minutes. If you want to stick around, feel free to stick around as well.
Okay, and like I said, the last thing I really wanted to talk about was service hours, because this is something else that always comes up. And for me, this is part of that member in good standing. How do you define who's a member in good standing? If I pay my money, but I never show up for a meeting, is that a member in good standing? If I am committed to the idea of service above self, then obviously that equates to some kind of service. And so for us, that's part of why we established this minimum standard, and why that we also said there's no double dipping between clubs in that respect. And this all equates to basically their senior year. So we have to keep track of service hours for 4 years for all students. And this is not an easy task, particularly when you're changing officers, and the people who are responsible for keeping up those, are either doing a good job or not. But we also established this for us, in order to earn an Interact cord, officers need to have a minimum of 40 hours of community service per year, and members need to have 30 hours of community service per year at a minimum. And they have to have been involved in Interact for 2 years. We feel like that's a pretty good level of commitment. Can you make everything? No, you can't. You can't always make the meetings. You can't always make it to individual opportunities. So we try to have a lot of different ones. But if they can commit to that, and usually that kind of hours is no problem. Last year's president and vice president, I think our president, if memory serves me correctly, she had something like 180 something community service hours. And our vice president was somewhere around 100 in regards to that. So that's essentially what we have committed to as far as our Interact cords.
That's cool.
Concerned.
That's a great, I've seen there is an Interact patch that students who have letter jackets can get a patch that goes on their letter jacket. That's pretty cool.
Okay, that's new to me. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. I don't know where the students got it at, but they found it. And it was an Interact patch to go on their, because and it's hard to get, I've not had much success getting athletes in Interact, because they've usually got practice in the afternoons and they just can't make the meetings. Now, sometimes they can't make the meetings, but they can make the service projects and kind of make up for it there, but yeah.
And we work with them. I've got one gal right now, she can't make the meetings. And she works, but she's committed to doing the community service. And like I mentioned earlier, Waxahachie Cares, our local food pantry, the other day she came in, she says, I want to go over there and commit time helping them, sort the food and give it out and that kind of stuff. Can I do that for community service? And I said, sure. We just need to set up a way of, you reporting back to us how many hours you're serving over there, and that's verifiable. And then certainly, we don't have to have everything boxed in to, we'll accept this and nothing else in that respect. So and that's all I have.
Yay. Thank you,
Almost made it
Steve.
without water.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I think there's so much here, and I just did a little poll, just so you know. I asked everybody if they would want to have a regular advisors meeting, and 100% of people said yes. So Steve, you must have done a good job here today. And thank you for sharing your contact information and the PowerPoint and the QR code. And if folks, didn't get it off the PowerPoint today, they can contact me and I'll get it to send out to people as well. In fact, Steve, if you don't mind, I may just, if you think it's okay, I'll send a blast out to all of our Interact advisors, because I think
Sure.
it's something everybody could use and look through even on their own time. Are there any questions or just any comments anybody has, or any, just
I would just
anything?
like to say, as a Rotary sponsor,
Change your mic on.
turn my mic on.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, we can hear you.
you do it.
Can you
Can you
hear?
not hear me?
We can hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. What I'd like to say as a Rotary sponsor is that it's very important that your Rotary sponsor comes to your meetings and your board meetings and is involved in your projects. If
I would
they
agree.
are just a figurehead, then they're not doing anything for you. And in a lot of cases, that's basically what happens. And you don't get any guidance at all from your Rotary Club. And the Rotary Club is obligated to help you be able to create your clubs. And it's not always easy. And like Steve said, everybody kind of gets pushed into it head first. And in my case, I joined Rotary and somebody asked me to help on a project. And the next year I was the person in charge of the project because that person wasn't there anymore. So I didn't have a clue. I was new to Rotary and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I've stumbled through it for years, but I'm here and I've enjoyed it. And one thing that I've discovered for sure is you cannot be a Rotary sponsor if you don't show up and you're not involved. So make sure that you talk to your Rotary sponsors and try to get them involved if they are not. And also it would be a good idea if they show up for these meetings, because a lot of them really, if they don't show up for your meetings and they don't know what's going on in your club, then they're not doing their job. So that makes your job a lot harder. So that's my word from Rotary.
And I think this is a good forum to share stuff. Rotary Club of Dallas, we have a lot of lawyers, so we have a very good release form for students to sign that their parents have to sign. Because when you're out doing activities, things can happen. And the reason we have that, one is for safety, two is if we need to take them to a hospital, get their medical attention, we need to have that with us when they're being, the ambulance is hauling them off if something like that accidentally happens. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll share one of those with you as well. So I've been doing this. I'm a Rotarian. I kind of got in the same way. I was on the board, got assigned to this committee, and next thing you know, the guy who was feeling this was gone and it was me. So, and I've been doing
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
since I've been doing this since probably 2010. So I've done it for a while. So, and it's key, and Ed is doing a good job. He's fairly new to this, 2 years, really, 3, and I've got to get him some help. And so it's interesting. Some schools, it's the sponsor that is on top of everything, does everything. And then there's some, and I think we're kind of an anomaly at Woodrow. It's always been the Rotarians, because the teacher sponsor before Dr. Gilbert and Ed didn't do anything. We, had to show up every meeting. We always had somebody there. So it varies club to club, interact. So I'm grateful to have Ed. We're going to get him some help. And we've gotten some good ideas, I think, for promoting how we're going to recruit. So one thing I'm going to try is, we set aside money for the Interact Club. One thing I'm going to do is go get some gift cards. And there's a deal at Woodrow Wilson November 30th there. It's for organizations. And I'm going to get kids to sign up and they win a gift card. At the same time, I get their name and contact info. So, so I'm going to try that. Money always works. I just got to figure out what's the right gift card. So
Food is always a good one.
which one?
Food, any kind
Yeah,
of food.
that or Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I found that they love the theater tickets also.
yeah.
Okay.
A gift
That's a good idea.
card for theater tickets.
That's a great
Because
idea.
going to the theater is expensive.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
if you get popcorn and a Coke and go to the theater and get your ticket, it's pretty pricey.
You've already spent some money. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today. It is 5:09 and I want to keep my 10-minute promise. I will go ahead and start scheduling out some monthly advisor meetings. And they may look different every time. Sometimes we may just want to have an open conversation where we can talk to each other about our successes, our challenges, and other things that are coming up. So I do want to invite you to the District 5810 Christmas party. You as faculty advisors and Rotarians are Rotarians. And so that is Thursday, December 9th at 6 p.m. at the Haggard Party Barn in Plano. And I'd love for you to come and be with other Rotarians and have barbecue and so forth. I did send out an email, so all the details are in that, but I will count that as our quote meeting for next month. Something fun for us to do and maybe get to meet each other in person. And then I'll plan another meeting for January for sure. And if you all have any ideas or topics that you are interested in or would like to see covered or would like to know more about, just let me know and I'll work on trying to get speakers and guests in who can tell us more about that. So I just want to say thank you to all of you and hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday week next week, and we'll see you the next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.